most authors are afraid of marketing or hate the idea of marketing because they associate marketing to sales. They see themselves as a salesman going from reader to reader saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And no one wants to do that, nor is it effective, obviously. And marketing is about the opposite of that. It's not sales. It's positioning your book in a way that it is organically found by readers.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is April Cox, for those of you that don't know me, and we have a really special guest speaker today. The first time with us, we have Ricardo Fayette. He is the co-founder of Reedsy and a marketing expert. I took a deep dive into his marketing book that I had read quite a while ago, and I had a nice fresh read, and boy, it covers everything that you need to know about book marketing. So we are going to talk all things book marketing with Ricardo today, and we'll be here to do some Q&A with you as well. So Ricardo, thank you so much for joining us. We're really happy to have you here.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for the wonderful intro.
So let's all get started with talking about your co-founding experience with Reedsy. Tell us how that came about, where the idea came from, and how that progressed into this amazing resource that we all have for authors.
Yeah, we started Reedsy in 2014, and I think the core of it hasn't really changed since then. The idea was to create a marketplace of publishing professionals that authors could have access to, from editors, proofreaders, illustrators, cover designers, marketers. And we've since added literary translators, also an author website designers, ghostwriters, so kind of all kinds of professional services that authors would need to contract at any point throughout their writing career. And the idea of Reedsy since the beginning was to make it really top professional, so a very curated marketplace. We accept less than 3% of the professionals who want to be listed on the platform. And since then, we've created a lot of content around the marketplace to allow authors to make best use of the services on it, because not everyone goes through a course or has the chance to have the education that you'll have through this course, and don't necessarily know how to work with an editor, different types of editing, how to work with an illustrator, etc. And as part of this education, I've specialized in marketing. I do all the marketing for Reedsy, and I've also worked with a ton of authors one-on-one to help them on their marketing across a wide variety of genres, more out of curiosity than anything else. That's where my book came from, as a result of these experiences. I've recently released another one on Amazon ads because I started to specialize a little bit more on Amazon and Facebook ads. And yeah, that's mostly my background and a little bit about Reedsy. And we're four founders. Two of us knew each other from university, and the others, we got to know each other over the internet. We all have slightly different skill sets. And it was my co-founder Emmanuel's idea at the start. He knew a little bit more about, the publishing industry. He learned about self-publishing that was really growing back then, but was still at the very early stages of the process. And it sounded like a really good idea. There weren't any well-known marketplaces at the time in the space, but generalist marketplaces like Elance, which is now Upwork, I think, Odesk, etc., were starting to really build up and develop. So it made sense to create one that was in more of a niche, serve the needs of authors and publishers.
Could you talk a little bit about the selection process or the vetting process that you go through with your providers?
Yeah, sure. So we get everyone who wants to offer services on Reedsy to fill in a profile. And that profile is what authors are going to see, right, when they land on the marketplace and browse through their profiles. So we ask stuff about their work experience, their portfolio, all the books that they've worked on in their capacity as an editor or a designer, or an illustrator, etc. A few projects that they've worked on that they particularly want to highlight for marketing. We ask metrics: if they run Amazon ads, what was the ACoS? If they ran Facebook ads, what was the CPC, etc. Then we review each of these profiles manually. So it takes a lot of basically manual time and energy. And our selection criteria vary from service to service, but usually we look for at least 5 years of experience in their fields. For editing and design, usually experience within traditional publishing. So at one of the big 5 publishers, for example, or a literary agency for editing. And for marketing, I personally interview all the people who apply to be listed as a marketer on the marketplace. For translation, we look experience with traditional publishers in their country. So it varies a little bit from service to service, but 5+ years of experience at least 10 to 20 books under their belt are kind of the minimum criteria.
So tell us, as a new author, as I'm getting ready to move forward with the marketing plan and pulling those folks together, what types of roles should we have available to us as we're working through the book marketing process?
Yeah, so marketing is pretty broad. So we wanted to define kind of some services that people could offer, or some subcategories of services that people could offer through Reedsy. One of them is like marketing plan, but that's probably something you should do on your own as part of the course. Others are email marketing. So people who can help put your list together, help you figure out your reader magnet strategy, help you write your welcome automation, help you figure out how often you're going to send newsletters, how you're going to format them, which system you're going to use, what you're going to send in terms of info, etc. Another one is advertising. So we've got experts for Amazon ads, Facebook ads, and BookBub ads that you can look for in there on the marketplace. And the last one is blurb and metadata experts. So people who are going to write the book description. That's something a lot of authors struggle with. So even if you write one, if you're not fully sure about it, you can ask a professional copywriter to write another one, and you can compare and iterate. You can run A/B tests as well. And metadata experts, so people who are going to do some keyword research, some category research, and things like that for you if you're not already doing that as part of the course. And in terms of who you should look for, I always recommend that you only hire people to fill in any gaps that you may have in your abilities. So you may be great at writing content, so you should probably do your own newsletter, write your own copy yourself, but you hate ads or you hate math or something like that for whatever reason. So in that case, you would want to hire someone to help you set up the Amazon or Facebook ads, manage them with you and show you how it's done. Or vice versa, if you're a very analytical person, but you just cannot write sales copy for whatever reason, then you would obviously handle the ads on your own and try to fill in that gap on the sales copy by hiring a copywriter. So try to identify what your strengths and weaknesses are, and fill the weaknesses with potential professionals.
Now, as we're researching, there's many articles and blog posts out there about the 100 things that you can do to market your book, or 75 things, or the 20 most important things. And when, especially as new authors, but also as those that are doing rapid release and things like that, should we be doing all the things? And how do we identify what things we should be focused on as a new author versus, trying to do as much as possible?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's true that we're guilty as well of putting out quite a lot of information, of ideas for marketing channels. No, what you should find out is one channel that works for you. But before you start digging into tactics to drive traffic, to drive eyeballs to your book, I think the single most important thing you can do is optimize the book and the book page as much as possible. So that means, a pristine book, both the interior and the exterior. So the best possible cover for the book. I talk about cover design very often because I feel like it's often misunderstood. Like a lot of authors want the right cover for their story, whereas cover has nothing really to do with story or with what you as an author want on it. The only job of book cover is to attract the right readers. It doesn't matter if it features the characters and the story. I mean, for children's books, it has to have some visual consistency with the interior if it's for picture books. But for like MG or YA, it doesn't really matter if it depicts exactly the protagonist as it's described in the book. The important thing is that it attracts the right kind of reader. So you can take examples from other successful books in your genre, try to mimic a little bit the tropes. You should do a lot of research before you think about cover design. 90% of the time when authors come to me asking what they could do to improve their book, I recommend a cover redesign because the cover is out of date, or it doesn't hit the right tropes, or it doesn't convey the right genre, or it doesn't look professional. So I spend a lot of time talking about that. Same thing goes for the blurb. Study what other blurbs or like product descriptions other best-selling books have in your genre. Are they written in first person? Are they written in third person? Are they short? Are they long? Do they start with social validation? Do they start with a quote? How do they leverage formatting? Do they have something in bold at the beginning? Take inspiration from these others. Now you've got ChatGPT as well, which can act as a way to create drafts. So you don't even necessarily have to hire a copywriter. You can use AI to generate ideas, drafts, at least for blurbs that you then refine on your own. You can create several versions. So if there's something in there you don't like, you just ask the bot to change that and they're going to change it. So you've got a lot of tools at your disposal to kind of craft the perfect sales copy. That's something you should spend quite a bit of time on. And then anything else on the book page, editorial reviews. I love editorial reviews because on Amazon and most other retailers, they're going to show up before customer reviews. And that's something you have control over. You can put any review in editorial reviews. It doesn't need to be a quote from like the New York Times or Forbes. If you've got a book review blog that reviewed your book, or NetGalley, or even customer reviews that are particularly well written, you can feature them in the editorial reviews, and that's going to show up before the customer review. So when people scroll down to see reviews, they're first going to see the editorial review. So you should definitely populate that. And then obviously getting customer reviews at launch. I think it's not worth sending a bunch of traffic to a book until every aspect of the page is optimized, from the cover to the product description to the editorial reviews and the customer reviews and the look inside as well. So when people click on the look inside on Amazon and they read the first few pages, they have to enjoy that. So make sure there are no typos in there, no plot holes, no kind of glaring errors. And ideally, you draw the reader in immediately. If you've taken all the boxes there, and that's a huge amount of work and the most important work, then we can move on to discussing marketing strategies to bring eyeballs to the page.
So you talked about the importance of having book reviews. How many is a good target for a new book launch before you kind of go all in with advertising and some of these other marketing channels?
I think you can start advertising from the moment you have 10, 15 reviews, especially if it's a new book. People will see that it's recently launched. The more reviews you have, the easier usually marketing or advertising becomes. So some people speak of psychological thresholds for reviews like 25, 50, 100, 500, 1,000. There's definitely a bit of that. So the more reviews, the merrier. But you can start marketing from the point when you have like 10, 15, it already becomes viable.
There's also kind of some chatter about, well, when you get to a certain number of reviews, 50 or 100, something magical happens with the Amazon algorithm. Is that the case? Or is that just like you said, psychological?
No, if anything happens, it's purely psychological. I think it's been demonstrated time and again that reviews don't affect any Amazon algorithm. They're not factors in any algorithm. But sales are obviously the main factor in all Amazon algorithms. And if reviews have a psychological impact on sales, then they can have an indirect impact, right? But yeah, it's usually not magical. You hit 50 reviews and suddenly your book lands on the New York Times bestseller list. That doesn't happen like that.
What are some of the most common mistakes that you're seeing new authors make when it comes to book marketing?
Not taking care enough of the product and the product page, but I talk about that quite a bit. That's like for me the number one thing. And the second thing is probably trying too many things at once, as you mentioned earlier. So trying to be on Twitter every day and having a TikTok and being on Instagram and running Amazon ads and running Facebook ads. And there's two issues with that. The first one is that you're gonna burn out because you're trying to do too many things at once, and that's not viable. Especially because you probably also want to write the next book and, do writing and publishing activities. The second thing is that you're not going to do any of these things effectively because you're not dedicating the proper time for them. So they're probably not going to produce any results. And the third thing is, even if something produces results, it's going to be hard to know what worked, right? Because you're running Amazon ads and you're running Facebook ads and you're being on TikTok and you're being on Instagram. Suddenly you start to see sales go up. Is it your presence on Instagram? Is it the Facebook ads? Is it the tweets? It's hard to know, right? Unless something goes viral, obviously. So I would say test one or two channels at once, have a proper strategy for testing them over a long enough period of time, like a couple of weeks or a month, and see if it produces results for you or not. If it doesn't, drop it and move to the next one.
So in your book, you talk about a golden channel or sweet spot that you learned. Could you just explain a little bit what you mean by a golden channel?
Yeah, usually it's a channel that moves the needle. So it's the kind of marketing activity where when you start doing it, you see a difference. A lot of times as authors, we do stuff for marketing and we think it may be happening. Got a couple sales today. It might be because I tweeted a little bit more than usual, or it might be because, I posted something on Instagram, maybe someone saw it. When you have a marketing channel that works well for you, you see the difference immediately. You don't have to guess, right? It's like I started Facebook ads and 5 days ago, and since then I have double or triples the sales I used to have. Like that's what I mean by moving the needle. When you find that, then you double down on that channel. You got to try and test different things, and you also got to learn before you try, right? If you say, okay, I'm going to try Facebook ads, but you spend 5 minutes on the ad and you know nothing about Facebook ads, that experiment is doomed to fail from the beginning. That's why I say spending a week or a couple weeks educating yourself about the channel, trying it seriously and giving it a proper chance. And if it doesn't work, then that's fine. You tried it. You move on to the next one. You don't sweat about it. But you also got to properly test it.
Do you feel that author branding is important and ties into your marketing efforts as well?
Yes, it does for the long term, I think. I've been talking like the book page, this channel's traffic, it's for a launch, right? Or a specific book. If you want to make a career writing books, then yeah, you need a branding, you need a newsletter, you need a platform, and all those things are absolutely vital, but they're part of like what I see as long-term marketing or author platform marketing rather than release or title marketing.
You know, I was reading through some of the stuff that you say in your book. One of the things you mentioned there is that sometimes writing more books in the same genre and focusing around a genre and continuing to have like multiple things in a series that can then bring people in, that can really help to convert better. And in the longer run, that's a much better strategy than kind of just bouncing all over a bunch of different genres and trying to rebuild separate types of audiences all the way through. So would you say that it's important for an author to pick a genre and go deep? And is there a certain number of releases in a series that they should be targeting? What's the secret sauce there?
There's no secret sauce, I think, but it is true that most successful authors you're going to see out there. And if you're like in the author groups, you're going to see patterns emerge. They pick a genre, they stick to the lane, and they release multiple books in that genre. So that's kind of the secret sauce that is not so secret anymore. Even traditionally published authors, successfully traditionally published authors, they write books in a specific commercial fiction genre. And they usually stick to their genre unless, they become super like blockbusters and they can afford to, write anything and their readers will follow them. But actually only a subset of their readers will. So yeah, there's a psychological effect among readers, and it is that they get attached to characters mostly. So as readers, you get invested in characters more than anything else. So a book can have amazing plot twists, really surprise you. It can have great world building, but at the end of the day, as a reader, what you get most attached to is the characters, and you want to know what happens next to this character, right? That the character doesn't have to be a person, it can be an alien, a dog, or whatever, right? But you get attached to that character, and you want to know what happens next. So characters are what should lead probably a series. Once you get a reader attached to a character, you can't afford to have bad books in the series, because if by book 5, book 6, you're like, this wasn't a great story, but you still want to know what happens to that character in book 7, and you're still going to buy book 7. So they're kind of a marketing cheat code, because you can release a bunch of books that readers are going to buy just because they're invested in the characters, just because you did a great job in book 1, book 2, book 3 of hooking them onto what happens to the characters. And it is much, much easier to sell 10 books in a series to 1,000 readers than to sell one book to 100,000 readers. It's a lot easier, because 100,000 readers, you got to find each and every single one of these 100,000 readers. In the other case, you just have to find 10,000 readers, which is not impossible, right? It's very much doable to sell 10,000 copies of book 1. And if you manage to grab them, hook them, make them interested in the characters, you can sell them 10 books, and you've sold 100,000 books with just 10 readers. So that's kind of the magic of series and universes. I like universes as well, because usually at some point you exhaust the arc of a series and the character arcs. Like there's only so much you can get your characters through, and you also get fed up with your series. And then a great tactic is to create a new series, but in the same universe. Romance authors do that a lot, with families that cousins come in, or distant cousins or whatever. Right. If you look at Brandon Sanderson, all his different fantasy and sci-fi series are set in the Cosmere universe. And there's some Easter eggs in each series. And so even you get in one series, you finish it and you're like, this is part of a bigger universe. I want to know what happens on this other planet. And so you start reading another series, and then you're hooked for another 10 books. So that's kind of a series of series universes, and they're another great marketing cheat code.
How does rapid release get factored in when you're starting to release multiple books? What's the benefit of doing some sort of rapid release strategy as well?
So there's two benefits to rapid releasing. The first one is again, in terms of like psychology for readers. If a reader finishes book one, they only have to wait a couple of weeks for book two to arrive, or maximum a month, right? For book two to arrive. They're not going to have the time to forget about you until the next book comes. So you naturally increase your read through from book one to book two, just because readers don't have the time to forget about you if they like your book. The second advantage is algorithmic. All retailers actually will give books a visibility boost during the first 30 days and also while they're on pre-order. Usually that's achieved through new releases lists. All the retailers have some sort of way to highlight new releases. They will also send new release emails to readers, and books usually stay on the new releases list for 30 days after their launch. So by launching a book every 30 days, you ensure that you consistently have at least one book in new release visibility mode, right? So that's the second algorithmic advantage. What I will do caution authors about with rapid releasing is that you set expectations with readers. Because if you release the first 3 books in a series 1 month apart, and the series is going to have 10 books, readers are going to expect the following books to come on months 4, 5, 6, 7, etc.
Right.
You can, to a certain extent, delay that. But what I don't recommend doing is doing a rapid release of the first 3 books and then release 1 book a year. Because then you start capturing like hungry readers who want 1 book after another, and then those readers read a ton of books. You start capturing will readers who read a ton of books. And between book 3 and book 4, they have to wait a year. They'll have read 100 books and probably forgotten about your series when your next book comes out. So be careful about the expectations you set when rapid releasing, and make sure that you can continue meeting them at least to some extent, even after the launch.
One of the things that really struck me when I was reading your book as well, you were talking about that as authors, sometimes we are looking for the readers. We want the readers. We need to find out where the readers are, and we're trying to go to where they are and to get them to put eyeballs on our book. But it's really that we need the readers to find our books. So it's like a little paradigm shift there a little bit. So could you expand on that a little bit more on, what's the difference between those things, and how can we do a better job of helping our readers find our books?
Yeah, I think that's a very important paradigm shift, because most authors are afraid of marketing or hate the idea of marketing because they associate marketing to sales. They see themselves as a salesman going from reader to reader saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And no one wants to do that, nor is it effective, obviously. And marketing is about the opposite of that. It's not sales. It's positioning your book in a way that it is organically found by readers. So you don't have to shout, buy my book on social media. You don't have to go door to door. You don't even have to go to events or things like that and tell people, please buy my book. You just position your book in a way that readers come across it. They open it, they read the first few pages, they like it, they buy it. That's what marketing is all about. And I wouldn't say it's passive, but it's definitely not salesy. It's about, positioning the book. And then a big part of marketing is interacting with readers. And you have to enjoy that or endure that, depending on your personality to a certain extent. If someone sends you an email saying, I loved your book, etc., you better answer that. Right? A lot of readers don't expect authors to answer, because if you email J.K. Rowling, she's not going to answer you. You as an indie author have the great advantage that you do have the time and the bandwidth to answer your readers, and you definitely should. And that just answering an email will create such a great connection with that reader. It's going to get them from, I loved your book, to, wow, this author answered me. I love this author. I'm going to buy all of their books, and I'm going to tell all my friends about their books. So you can create super fans. And there's a great book by David Gogran called Strangers to Superfans, which I also highly recommend. That goes more into that. And that's another part of marketing, but that's honestly something you should enjoy. So if you're afraid of marketing, or if you don't like the idea of marketing a book, it means you have to change your mindset about it. It's not about being salesy or anything like that. It's about positioning, and it's about interacting with readers once they've found you.
You also mention in your book, traffic times conversion equals sales. And you mentioned that it's not so much the traffic that driving more and more eyeballs or traffic, but that oftentimes you have to focus on the conversion, because that's where the issue is with getting the readers or browsers, turning them into buyers. Could you talk a little bit more about conversion and how do we troubleshoot? How do we know we have a conversion issue? And what kinds of things can we do to help improve that?
Yeah, conversion is incredibly important also because we don't often think of it or identify it as a marketing problem. A lot of the times we're focused on I need more people, I need more readers to discover my book, all right, and to land on my Amazon page because they're going to buy it. But the big question is, once readers land on your Amazon page, how many actually buy it? How many are interested enough to click on the buy button? That goes back to everything I said in the beginning about, cover, blurb, reviews, positioning of your book. And that's why a lot of times it can be better to spend money on a great cover than hundreds of dollars on Facebook ads afterwards. Because if a new cover or better cover doubles your conversion, suddenly you have to spend half the money to generate the same amount of sales. And that's why conversion is so important. Another reason why conversion is very important is that it's the one thing, even above sales, that retailers are going to reward above all. If you think of in terms of Amazon, if Amazon sees that, these two books, one book has had, 1,000 page views and sold 100 copies. The other book has had 500 page views and sold 100 copies. So both have had the same level of sales, 100 sales. Which book is Amazon going to promote? The one that has had the fewer page views. Because Amazon thinks if I send another 500 people to this book, that's another 100 sales. Whereas for the other one, I got to send another 1,000 people to that book to generate 100 sales. And Amazon, or any other retailer for that matter, is interested in the same thing that you are, selling books. So they're going to evaluate the conversion of your book versus other books. And they're going to say, I better send an email. I better recommend this book in an email to readers because this one converts much better. Conversion is going to vary from one group to another, from one genre to another, etc. Ways you can stress test it: ads. Amazon ads, particularly if you create Amazon ad campaigns to targeting very relevant targets like other authors in your genre, other titles in your genre, other ASINs, so other books in your genre that are very close to yours. If you get, I think, a conversion on your Amazon ads under 5-10%, there's probably a conversion problem. So if you get 100 clicks and less than 5 sales, there's a huge problem on Amazon ads, because that's very relevant traffic. It's people who have looked at or purchased books that are very, very similar to yours. So they should be interested in yours. And if less than 5% of them actually are, then that probably means there's something wrong with either your cover, your product description, your reviews, your look inside, or all of those.
What's a good conversion rate?
It depends on the price of the book as well. For my free book, for the free book that I have a conversion on Amazon ads of 30%. But that's a free book. So it's not unheard of to have up to 50% conversion. For a paid book, if it's in a normal price range, I think 10-15% conversion is great. 5 to 10%, it might be the targeting, it might be the product, might be a bit of both, but you can probably improve that. Below 5, there's a problem.
If you really know your audience, does that improve? If you're sending the right people, then that will get a better conversion result as well. Is that true? The targeting
absolutely.
Of the individuals? Okay.
Absolutely. The targeting is vital part of the equation for conversion. The conversion depends on who you send to the page and on the page itself. The page needs to meet the expectations of the people who land on them. But more than even demographics, I like to think of audience in terms of comp authors, right? Readers of XYZ authors. That's my audience, rather than women between 40 and 55 years old who live in suburban, whatever, because readers can be very varied. And so it makes more sense. If you publish a YA book, you might think, so it's YA. So my target market is teenagers between the ages of this and that who live in this place. And that's not true. A lot of adults read YA. I read YA fantasy all the time. So you got to think, okay, fans of this author, fans of Sarah J. Maas are going to love my series. That's kind of an audience, right? That's a valid audience for me.
And you see that in a lot of book descriptions. It kind of helps individuals know that, yes, this book is for you if you're a fan of this and this. And so often I hear authors saying, there's not really anything out there like what I'm doing. This is a relatively novel. They just don't have those really clear maps of, this genre. People that are reading this and this and this will be a good option for them. What do you do if that's the case? Is that just, an example of not really writing to market, and then you're going to have to suffer the consequences?
I think it is. You've got to be prepared for that. There's one chance in a million that you create a new market. Harry Potter, when it came out, there wasn't really anything like that out there. It was middle grade, but fancy. There weren't a lot of comp titles, and that's why it got rejected a lot in the early days. But hey, J.K. Rowling created a whole new market with her book. So there's a chance that you could achieve that, right? But that's one chance in a million. The much more likely scenario is readers don't know what to expect. So they look at your book and they don't know where it fits in the market. And fortunately or unfortunately, readers tend to have very specific tastes, and they're going to be able to pinpoint those tastes, right? Especially in commercial fiction. So I love YA epic Arthurian fantasy, right? And if I get a sci-fi book, I'm not going to be as interested in that. So a lot of readers are going to be like that. You need to be able to pinpoint where your book exactly fits in the market. And if you're not able to do that, then you haven't written to market, and you get prepared for the possibility that it's going to be very, very, very hard to sell your book.
The other piece of that too is we're looking at a small amount of ads, right? Like if you're just getting started as a new author, do you have a preference of where you invest your budget, a small budget to get started? Is Facebook better than Amazon? Does it depend on your genre and your book?
I would probably start with Amazon just because it is a place where readers buy books, and it's a place where you can test conversion pretty easily. Through what I mentioned before, it's a lot easier to set up an ad on there. You don't have to create copy. You don't have to create an image. You just have to choose your targeting. So you just have to say, I'm going to target these 3 authors, or I'm going to target these 5 titles. It's pretty easy to set up. It's not going to produce massive results. Like you're not going to go from 0 to 100 sales a day, but you might go from 0 to 2, 3, 4, 5 sales a day. And that's already a result, right? For a low budget. So I would start with Amazon ads. If they don't produce results, you can try Facebook ads. Even if they do produce results, you can reinforce them with Facebook ads. But yeah.
I know that you went into depth in a street team and how to use a street team. I think we refer to it in the children's book stuff that we're doing as a launch team. So is that something that you would recommend that everybody do? And, are you giving free book? Are you doing a 99-cent launch? Like, what are some of the secrets of having a really good launch and utilizing a street team well?
Yeah, I recommend having a launch team, especially if it's your first book, because you want those reviews at launch, and it's going to be hard to get them otherwise, immediately at launch at least. In terms of what you send them, it depends, I would say, on how badly you want that person to review and you endorse your book. For me, there are different levels of influence, I guess, in your launch team. If you have just a random reader in your genre who's expressed interest, and you send them an e-copy of your book, probably a free e-copy. If you get another famous or relatively famous author in your genre who's actually interested, you're like, well, it'd be amazing if that person read my book and actually reviewed it, or a famous TikToker or a famous bookstagrammer or anything like that, then try to think about okay, what could make this person really read my book? What traditional publishers do or used to do is to top tier influencers, they send hard copies, they send hardbacks, sometimes in the box, sometimes with chocolates or other gifts or book-related swag to not bribe, but get these people to
it's incentivizing things.
Exactly.
I received an amazing, gorgeous box filled with tissue paper and stickers and this beautiful book. And I just couldn't wait to go on and review it. And it's a totally different experience than to get something that clearly there wasn't a lot of thought into. Even if you're receiving a book, it does make a difference taking that little extra effort.
So if there's someone who's worth it, in your opinion, in your launch team, go for it. Don't spare any effort, because just that editorial review on your page, on your advertising, can make a huge difference in your marketing afterwards.
Dee's asking, what if the marketplace appears to be really saturated in the genre that you're writing for?
Yeah, I think that's a much lesser problem than not having a market. right? If the market is saturated, it means that it was popular. It might still be popular. It might be less popular than it was a year ago because it's getting saturated, but it's still very popular. Like I remember it was maybe after Twilight, publishers stopped accepting vampire novel submissions because that was over, right? The trend was over. Still millions of vampire books that sell every year. The trend is far from over. So even if a market is in decline, that market exists. And the fact it appears saturated and is in decline might mean that a lot of authors are pulling out of it because they see it in decline. And so there's actually a chance for you to enter and grab the readers that are still in there. So I wouldn't worry that much about the market. What I would do is like really learn what the top authors are doing in that market, try to emulate them. And if possible, like try to make friends with them. So if they go to certain conferences, try to go to those conferences as well, read their books, review their books, potentially email them, potentially if they answer, send them hard copies of your books. I mean, yeah, in a very genuine and non-creepy way.
Genuine and non-creepy is important.
Very important. Always important. But yeah, that's not a problem for me if the market appears to be saturated. There's still a ton of opportunities.
Kathleen asks, does the person doing the book description at Reedsy first read your book in order to help create that content description?
It depends on whom you hire. I think some people do, some others don't. I wouldn't say it's an imperative. For one reason, the people who are going to read your book description haven't read your book. So the same thing as like your cover doesn't have to be loyal to a scene or a character in your book and represent exactly what happens in your book. Your book description doesn't have to represent exactly everything that happens in your book. It might only cover 10, 20, 30% of what happens and omit some of the world building you think is important because you were attached to the story, but the reader might not, right? A lot of the time, book description, for example, focus on external conflicts because it's very hard to write an internal conflict in a book description without just like telling readers there's an internal conflict. It's rare that it's going to work well, so it's going to focus a lot on the external conflict. So a lot of times they might work off of a long synopsis, and write a book description that way. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Pat's asking, do you also recommend a launch team for your second and third book and subsequent releases?
Yeah, for me, a launch team is something you cultivate over time. If you're going to release more books, that team shouldn't just be a launch team. That's kind of why I call it street team or reader group or like closed reader group. Like you can call it whatever you want. But basically, it's a group of readers that are separate from your bigger mailing list and they get perks. And they're ideally super fans. So they get your books in advance. Maybe they get access to special giveaways in the meantime. Think about any kind of perks that would make them happy and would make them even more super fans. It's a relationship you got to cultivate over the years and over the releases. And if someone stops interacting in there, a lot of authors call their reader groups regularly. If they see that someone hasn't bought and reviewed a book in the last 3 releases, they'll send a gentle email saying, hey, if you're not interested in being in my art team or street team or launch team anymore, I can remove you.
I've got a couple of questions about people saying, do we need to ask permission or is there certain wording that we need to avoid when we're talking about other authors in our book listing?
I think what you're not permitted to do is use those as keywords on KDP and other retailers. So you cannot put like Harry Potter as a keyword. I think there was a comment from Bassi, just pretty on point. As long as you don't say anything bad about those books, you just compare yours to them and basically promote them or say that you love them, because otherwise you wouldn't have written a book like that book if you didn't love that book, right?
Right.
That's okay. If you do it all the time and you clearly are trying to game some algorithm to show up number 1 in searches for that author's name or that title name, then you run into issues and you could get sued or whatever from the author. But everyone knows the need for comps and the need to be able to say this book is like this and this, or this meets this. What you shouldn't do also is like pick too big and obvious comps. Say something like this is Harry Potter meets Outlander or something, that doesn't really make sense. Try to pick mixes that make sense and they're not too big and broad.
It really does select your audience, doesn't it? It lets them kind of self-select. Yes, that's me. I like those genres or I follow those authors. That's great. What I'd like to close with is maybe a little bit of wisdom around Amazon ads, Facebook ads. Like there's so much questions about algorithms and what works with one platform and what doesn't. And are there any tips that you can share for those of us that are new to Amazon ads or just getting started with launching a book and we're trying to just, find that sweet spot with Amazon ads that are going to help drive those sales forward and conversions forward?
For me, Amazon ads are very analytical and that they depend on two things, your targets and the bids that you set. So if you're launching a book, you probably want to have relatively high bids because you want that volume of impressions, clicks, and hopefully sales. And one important thing to understand about Amazon ads is the way the auctions work. So the bid is a big part of the auction, but then your ads have a quality score as well. And that quality score is determined by how well readers have reacted to your ads in the past, whether they've clicked on them. Clicking on your ads makes Amazon money, and whether they purchase your book afterwards. Purchasing your book also makes Amazon money, makes you money, but makes Amazon money as well. So clicks and sales are great signals to Amazon. So in the beginning, your Amazon ads account has no data. So for Amazon, it's a score of like 5 out of 10, right? For all your ads, because Amazon doesn't know, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? A lot of other accounts out there have been advertising for years. They do really well in terms of clicks and sales. And so they have scores of 8, 9, 10. You want to outbid them. So you're going to have to set much higher bids than they do. Progressively, if your ads do well, if you have got that good conversion that I was talking about earlier, then you can afford to progressively reduce your bids because you've got that quality score. And you're going to see your spend go up because Amazon says, well, that book is doing well. These ads are doing well. I want to show them to more people. So for Amazon ads, I will always keep in mind that Amazon is interested in two things, clicks and sales, because that's what makes them money.
When you say high bids, it's that relative, let's just say it suggests that I start with 92-cent bid. And I'm seeing things like that right now. Is that, a starting point and we really should target more? Think of this as an investment in marketing for our book, not necessarily expecting it to be profitable right away.
There's two schools of thought, and it depends on your budget, really. If you have enough budget that you can afford to take a loss to test keywords quickly, then you can afford to bid up to $1 or more on very relevant keywords because you want to test them as quickly as possible. When they get to 15 clicks, if they haven't produced anything, I generally pause them or reduce the bid a lot. If you don't have the budget or you want to be more conservative in your approach, then you set lower bids. The Amazon suggested bids aren't always great because Amazon suggests them based on bids across the entire store, not just books. So they're not always great indicators. I would ask other authors in your genre. I would ask other authors who are part of the course, if they've run ads on Amazon, what their bids are. And I wouldn't necessarily copy those bids. Maybe I would set them a little bit higher because, again, you have a new account. But for children's books, I have limited experience with children's books, but I think I would start at 0.50 and a little bit above, and then work my way down if they start getting clicks and no sales, or work my way up for those that are not getting impressions.
When you're initially setting ads for Amazon for a new book launch, are you starting with all the different types of ads? Are you doing automatic? Are you doing product ads as well as keyword ads? Or do you start with one and then build up over time?
I start with all three of them, but knowing that my automatic ads are only going to start performing well once my keyword and product ads have brought in some sales. But with auto ads, it's Amazon targets what they think is going to produce sales. And in the beginning, they have no idea because they have no data about your book. Once your book has had a few sales, they start having some data. And the more sales and the more clicks, etc., the more data they have. So usually you'll see that your auto campaigns start performing better as soon as your other campaigns start producing sales. But I will have those right there in the beginning to start picking up activity as soon as the others perform. And then I would create, a product targeting, so ASIN targeting and a keyword targeting campaign for all close comp books. So those could be books that are already in your also boats, or books that you have identified as close comps, books that are doing well, so they're in the top 100 and in your niche category on Amazon, etc. And then if, again, you have more budget, you can also create other campaigns for lesser comps. So books are still in your genre and relevant to yours, but maybe not as close or as closely relevant to yours as you think. Sometimes we have no way of anticipating what's going to be a great target. 50% of the time you can have some intuition, but sometimes, something that you thought was a somewhat related book ends up being an amazing target for whatever reasons. It's good to be able to go broad, but it depends on how much you can afford to invest and lose in the beginning as well.
What about Amazon gives you the opportunity to do like up and down and give, extra bids for getting on the first page? I find that to end up not really translating to more than if I just did fixed bids and have a little bit better control over what's happening. That just could be my complete control freak attitude that I am when it comes to Amazon ads. Am I missing something in not taking those advantages and letting Amazon adjust the bids?
No, I was like you. I started with up and down. Mostly use fixed bids now when I start. So the way up and down works is Amazon is going to automatically increase your bid by up to 100%. So it might double your bid if they think that placement, that impression, is likely to convert into a sale. And the issue is that it might be likely to convert into a sale, but for you, the cost of the click is not going to be offset by the sale. They only take the conversion into account. They don't take profit for that optimization. So a lot of times using up and down ends up eating into your profitability. I like to use up and down for scaling. If I have a campaign that is doing really well and I want to spend more on that campaign, I will use up and down. If I'm running a free promo or a price promo on my book and I want volume for 7 days, I'll switch everything to up and down and raise the bids by a lot, because at that point, I care less about profitability and I care more about volume, getting a bunch of sales in that short amount of time. So that's when I would use up and down or like increasing percentages for top search.
When it comes to keyword terms, how many typically do you target? I've heard hundreds are fine, up to 1,000. I've heard some people say 1, 5, 10. It's all over the place. So what is your best practice to get started?
My best practice is maximum 50 and ideally below 25 per ad group, because otherwise what's going to happen is Amazon is going to identify 10, 15 keywords that do relatively well and it's going to focus on them. It's kind of a lazy algorithm, as Janet Margot puts it. Once it finds a few targets that do well, it's going to focus on those. And your others might get completely ignored. So yeah.
So you would do multiple ad groups in order to
Absolutely.
In one ad? Okay. How do you break up those ad groups? What are the differences in how those different ad groups are set up?
Yeah, for example, if I do a campaign targeting closed comps, I would have maybe 20 or 25 titles or closed comp titles. And I would have one ad group targeting their titles, one ad group targeting their ASINs, one ad group targeting the author names, and one targeting maybe the series titles or the series ASINs if they have those. So that's one example of how we break it up.
Just going back to Facebook, what are some of the things on the Facebook side where, things might perform better on the Facebook, or when you would use Facebook instead of or in addition to Amazon?
Facebook is a very different platform because you got to be a lot more creative. You can come up with an image, with copy, and you get much less relevant or qualified traffic because it's the people you attract are people who are browsing Facebook or Instagram. They don't have a purchase intent. People who are on Amazon have a purchase intent. On Facebook, they have a social media intent, right? So the conversion is automatically going to be a lot lower. Because of that, I usually use Facebook for lower price points. If you're running a free promotion or a price promotion, then Facebook can drive a ton of relatively cheap traffic. And since the price is lower, the barrier to entry is lower, even that low quality or like less qualified traffic can convert. Or in some cases, you can get your Facebook traffic to convert even on higher price points. But that's when you need to potentially do retargeting. So target people who viewed videos or who've interacted with your page before, who've interacted with your Instagram account before. So you can do a lot of retargeting there. And yeah, it's a completely different beast where there can be a huge conversion problem that is not necessarily due to your product page. That's why I tend to recommend people start on Amazon. And then if your Amazon ads do well, try to set up some ads on Facebook, see how those convert. You can use Amazon attribution to measure your conversion for your Facebook ads. But don't be surprised if your conversion rate from Facebook ads is less than 1%. That happens to me all the time on full price points.
So did you want to talk a little bit about some of the courses and education that you have on Reedsy for authors?
Yeah, we've got a series of 3 short courses on writing, publishing, and marketing. They're short in the sense that you get 1 email a day for 10 days, and these emails are like 5-minute reads. So you can read that over coffee in the morning or in a commute. It's great to get the basics about a specific marketing channel. So we've got one on Amazon ads, we've got one on Facebook ads, we've got one on like mailing lists, one on Amazon algorithms, which is probably one of the main ones I'd recommend. They're free and they're not very time intensive. They're great options to learn the basics. Then we've got videos people mentioned on our YouTube channel. We do webinars every couple of weeks as well. The short courses are a good place to start.
I was surprised How to Market a Book by Ricardo Fayette overperform in a crowded market. I was able to download it for free. So is this an evergreen, like free, or is it just on a limited promotion? We just got lucky.
No, that's from a free book.
Fantastic. It is really filled. If you have gotten a lot out of what you're hearing, this is just really scratching the surface in what Ricardo covers in this free ebook. So grab that. He also has an Amazon ads one. That's the second book in the series that is also fantastic for those of us that are learning and growing knowledge of Amazon ads. Ricardo, I'll give you an opportunity to just have some closing comments or, how people can follow up or, any additional things you'd recommend that they do to engage more with Reedsy.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks again for having me. Thanks for the kind comments. If you have any questions about what I said today, you want to learn more, I do have a book on Amazon ads. If you want to learn more about that specifically, that's a paid book. But took a long time to write. And if you have any questions about the free book, the paid book, about Facebook ads, or any other topics that I've talked about today, my email address is ricardo@reedsy.com, and it's where I am by far the most responsive and attentive. So really don't hesitate if you have any questions and want to bounce any ideas off of me. Always happy to get emails from authors, just like you should be happy to get emails from readers, and I will always answer them.
This was really wonderful, jam-packed, filled with information. Thank you again so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.